This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Rashiva Shlita, Benayel, Chashiva Rabbeim. I want to take the opportunity to thank the yeshiva for inviting me to this beautiful Chanukah Masiba. And I want to particularly thank my Yedid, Rabbi Kiva Klein, for extending the invitation to me. Me and Rabbi Kiva, we go way back. Way back in the day, we were classmates in Yeshiva Tar T'mima many years ago, and even back then, I remember Rabbi Kiva was the tremendous Lamdan, Balmidos, and it's a big chizuk for me to see after all the years, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Kiva is one of the Chash Rabbeim here. And but over the years, I kept up with Rabbi Klein because I would like to consider myself, I don't know if I'm Roy, but I'd like to consider myself a Talmud of Rabbi Klein Shver, Rabbi Gad Rav Isaac Goldbaum. So through that connection, we kept up over the years. And I value my friendship very much with Rabbi Klein. So to honor him, to honor our friendship, I agreed to come here. But really, there's another very important reason why I'm very happy to be here today. And the Rosh Yeshiva might not know, but he's gonna know very soon. And that is because my family goes back at least 50 years with the Landau Mishpacha. How's that? In 1962, my grandparents moved into the neighborhood on Avenue L and East 9th Street. My grandmother was Reb Shimon Hirschfang. My uncle is Tzvi Meshulam. So my grandfather was one of the first Mispalalim, not by the Rosh Yeshiva's father, by the Rosh Yeshiva's Zayda, in the living room. And my whole life I grew up hearing that the Baba's potato kugel is mamish me'ein olam haba. My mother used to tell me on Shabbos, what Shabbos? Shabbos is the kegel of Rabbi Landau's Baba. And I've been hearing this since I'm a kid. And the honey cake. And Ad Hayoim Hazeh, you should know, in 1962, when my grandparents came to this neighborhood, Rabbi Landau Shul didn't have 1 minyan a day. They could barely get a minyan on Shabbos. In fact, my uncle, who was not even bar mitzvah, the Zayda would ask him, know who you're davening to? So he'd point up, oh, you're number 10. He wasn't even bar mitzvah then. That's what the neighborhood looked like in 1962. It was like Pach Shemen. It was like one Pach Shemen. That was Choysam b'Choysam Shel Kohen Gadol. Umimenu madlik l'chol ha'olam Baruch Hashem. I just davened in Rabbi Landau Shul on El and East 9th. There were over 100 people by a random 145 minyan for Mincha. They didn't have to even mitzaref 12-year-olds. There wasn't enough room to stand. It was mamish begeder the nes of Chanukah. That's what, you look at Yeshivas Veretzky, you look at Rabbi Landau Shul, it's mamish, the miracle of Chanukah every day of the year. There's no other way to describe it. 1962, there are 3 frum families in the whole neighborhood. I don't know if you remember the Glick family. There's also Shpacha. So, in that connection, I was very glad to join this Heilige Yeshiva on the Yom Tov of Chanukah. And we look at this Moisa, we look at this Yeshiva, and what we see is Siyata d'Shmaya l'mala min ha'teva. It's a miracle, it's a nes. And every bacher in Yeshiva, every young man in Yeshiva, learning is not always an easy thing. It's a very difficult thing sometimes. You have to break your head, you have to mutzazich, and you look at the shelves, and the shas is very big. And everybody's looking, everybody wants Siyata d'Shmaya. Everybody knows that without Siyata d'Shmaya, it's not going to happen. So the question is, and that's what we came here today maybe to discuss a little bit, in Yonei Chanukah, how could we all be Zoicha to Siyata d'Shmaya? So I want to share with you 2 stories. Not stam stories. You think, I'm a rabbi of a shul, so you think I'm going to come in and tell you good, nice stories. I'm not a storyteller, but I'm going to tell you 2 stories from Chazal. The first story comes from Vayikra Rabbah, Parsha Yebez. The story is about a shikar. Not stam a shikar. This guy, his entire life was alcohol, beer, yayin, sheikhar, whiskey, schnapps, bourbon, everything you could imagine. In fact, the whole family was going down the tubes to the point where he started selling the table in the house to buy alcohol. And he started selling the chairs, and he started selling the couch. He was selling the light fixtures. The kids would come home, where's the homework? Everything he sold for alcohol. And the kids couldn't take it anymore. It's a Medrash Rabbah. So they got together, and they decided they're going to take the father, they're going to make him drunk, they're going to put him in the Beis HaKvaros, they're going to put him 6 feet under, and that's the end of him. I mean, they can't live like that. So they gave the father a couple bottles of wine, it's a medrash, and they planted him in the Beis HaKvaros. So the father is lying there in a drunken stupor, and just then a caravan is passing by, and the caravan is selling wine and beer and schnapps and whiskey, and as they're passing by his kever, all of a sudden they hear a cry, there's a war in the city, there's a war in the city. They drop everything, and all the wine and all the alcohol goes pouring down into his kever. And just then he wakes up from his stupor, and he says, Mamish, Gan Eden is better than they told me. And he's lying there in the grave, and he never had it so good in his life. So a few days later, the family went to check on him, and they see the guy lying in the grave. They said, this guy always gets what he needs. So they decided there's no alternative. They took him back into the house, and they made a rotation. That on Sunday, Yankel will give him alcohol, and Monday, the next brother, because there's no alternative. So the Michtam Mayo asks, what kind of medrash is this? This is like medrash for alcoholics. What's the medrash teaching me? What's the limud? What's the message of the medrash? Says the Michtam Eliyahu, the medrash is telling you the yisoid to reach gadlus. The yisoid is, the Gemara says in Makos, b'Torah, b'Neviim, b'Ksubim, b'Derech sha'adam roitza leilech moilichen oisai. On the road that a person wants to take, the Rebbeinu Shalom will bring you there. Sometimes you look at Gedolei Yisrael, and you wonder, how's it shaykh that Ramosha Feinstein was able to learn Shulchan Aruch 400 times? He was able to write an Igrois Moshe. How is it possible? You know what the answer is? It's not humanly possible. It's not possible. Ramosha had Siyata D'Shmaya. It was L'mala Min HaTeva. Because if a person has the Ratzon, and the person puts their best foot forward, and they're mechazik themselves, and they try a little bit more, a little bit extra, I want to tell you a few words from the Chavos HaVavos. Never forget these words. Chavos HaVavos says, Hama'at mikem hu rav etzlai. A little bit from you is very great to him. Who's the him? The Rebbeinu Shalom. If you just do a little bit extra, the Rebbeinu Shalom will take you all the way up. When the elevator was invented, the Chafetz Chaim was very happy with the invention of the elevator. Why? Said the Chafetz Chaim, this is the perfect mashal to Ruchnias. All you need to do is press a button and put your right foot in. Make one step. Once you take that extra step, the Rebbeinu Shalom lifts you up all the way up ad Hashemayim. I'm going to tell you another story. It's a Gemara in Yuma Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis. Say, how did he remember that? He must know Masechta Yuma. No, I have a trick. What's my trick? See, I like to say this medrash on Chanukah. On Chanukah, there are a total of 44 neiros, but that's downstairs. Ba'aretz, b'Shamayim, there are another 44. Right? So that's 48. That's 48. But it's Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis. The answer is it's not a perfect nimshal. It's not a perfect remez. But that's how I remember it. Doesn't make any sense. I once went to a shiur, one of the biggest go'onim of the last generation, Rabbi Vadi Yosef. I heard a shiur from his son. Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, he came to Queens, I was a Rav in Queens at the time, and he asked the Shiloh, there was a room full of Rabbanim, nobody knew the answer. What siman is Hilchos Dogim in Yeridea? So nobody knew. He said, nobody knows, siman Pei Gimel. So you now remember, Pei Gimel is Rosh Hashanah, gefilte fish. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, if you want to remember Torah, you have to make ramazim. They don't have to make sense. You remember. The less they make sense, the more you'll remember. Anyway, the Gemara says like this. Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, Reb Yossi, they came to an end. And the Gemara says, Reb Meir Kadayik Bishma. Reb Meir looked very carefully at people's names. And if somebody had a good name, Reb Meir was able to discern that they had a certain good character. And if they had a bad name, Reb Meir realized maybe there's something wrong. So they asked the innkeeper, what's your name? So the innkeeper said, my name is Kidar. So Reb Meir said, oy vey. Says, Kidar tapuchos heima. Forget, this guy's an oisvar. But Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, they were not medayik bishma. So they gave him their wallets to watch. But Reb Meir, he knew better. He knew not to give this guy the wallet to watch. So he took the wallet and he buried the wallet in the Beis HaKvaros. The only thing is, the grave that he buried the wallet at was the grave of the father of the innkeeper. That night, the innkeeper goes to sleep, and he has a dream. And in the dream, his tata came to him, and he says, guess what? You won't believe it, I have the biggest scam. There's a wallet buried next to my foot. Why don't you wake up, dig it out, and you'll become rich. So the innkeeper, he was a big ganav, but he was no big chacham. So he went to Rabbi to ask him a shayla. He says, Rabbi, do dreams mean anything? Leil Shabbos. Rabbi says, they mean mamish nothing. He then runs to the Beis HaForos and stands by the wallet until Shabbos is up. Frekt Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, what's going on over here? The father's in the Olam HaEmes. In the Olam HaEmes, everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows what the right thing. The father in the Olam HaEmes is going to come to the kid to help the kid ganga? The answer is yes, because b'derech sha'adam roitza leilech melich noisai. Whatever you choose in life, hein l'toiv, hein l'muta, whatever path you take, you should know the Rebbeinu Shalom will give you tremendous siyata d'shmaya, whatever it is. And if the Rebbeinu Shalom will give a ganav siyata d'shmaya, that people are going to come from the Olam HaEmes to be megalas soidos, to help them steal, then we know midah toiva meruba. The midah toiva, the midah of atava, the midah of siyata d'shmaya l'toiv is 500 times greater. So if a bacher puts his best foot forward and gives that extra energy and kavana and try again, you know how much siyata d'shmaya the Rebbeinu Shalom will give you? L'mala manateva. So I want to share with you one thought for Chanukah. I heard this b'shem Rav Asher Arieli, mamish adovar nifla. You know, there's a shaila all the achronim deal with. You have these two nisim of Chanukah. You have the nes of the Pachshemen. You have the nes of the military victory. And all the achronim try to deal with, so what are we celebrating? What are we commemorating? Is it the military victory, or is it the nes of the Pachshemen? Do you need both? In the Alanisim, we only talk about the military victory. In the Gemara, we only talk about the Pachshemen. The two miracles seem to have nothing to do with each other. They seem to be so different. Is there any mahalach to explain what was Rebbeinu Shalom trying to show with these two nisim? Says Rav Asher Arieli, unbelievable. The secret of Chanukah really lies in the Bach. The Bach in Simon Reish Ayin. The Bach wants to know, everybody knows the Lavush, everybody knows the difference between Chanukah and Purim. Purim we celebrate Mishta v'Simcha. Chanukah we celebrate L'Hodos L'Halal. Purim we celebrate physically. Chanukah we celebrate Baruchnias. And everybody knows the reason is. Because on Purim, Haman tried to kill our bodies, tried to kill us physically, so we celebrate physically. And Chanukah, the Yevanim try to take away Torah mitzvahs, so we celebrate Baruchnias. But the Bach wants to know why. In other words, why in the times of Chanukah did the Rebbeinu Shalom allow the Yevanim to try to take away Ruchnias? And the times of Purim, the Rebbeinu Shalom allowed Haman to make a gzeira against our bodies. In other words, we know what the gezeiros are and we know what the Yeshua was. But how do we account for why the gezeiros were so different? So the Bach is Megala to us something, and we don't know the Makar of the Bach. Doesn't seem to be found in Chazal, but the Bach says that every Gezeira is always Midah Keneged Midah. And if you see in the times of Chanukah that the Goyim made a Gezeira L'Hashkicham Terasecha, but even more than that, the Gezeira of the Yevanim was they closed down the Beis HaMikdash. They took a big block and they shut up the shop. It was done. There were no karbanos, there was no menorah, there was no Tamid Shel Shachar, Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. The avodah in the Beis HaMikdash stopped. Says the Bach, Mamish Davar Nifla, that if you see a Yachid or a Tzibur that loses the opportunity to be Mekayim a mitzvah, that must mean that the Rebbeinu Shalom is punishing them Midah Keneged Midah. It must be Klal Yisrael was Nisrashel in the avodah. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says like this, and this is a very big aside, that there are patterns in life. If you see somebody who has tremendous opportunity for zechusim, that means they must have been mechazik themselves, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says, this is the derech that you choose. But it works the other way as well. Because if a person is nisrashel ba'avoida, just a little bit, then the Rebbe Shem says, don't do me any favors. You can be nisrashel ba'avoida, we'll close down the shop completely. You won't have the opportunity at all. Beis HaMikdash will be closed for business. In life, you can never stay the same. Your opportunities will never remain the same. Either your opportunities get more and greater, or they go down. That's the pattern of life. Says the Bach, when Klal Yisrael was nisrashel ba'avoida, the avoida in the Beis HaMikdash was taken away completely. In order to be masaking that, what did Klal Yisrael have to do? They had to be mechazik in their avoida. So they went ahead and they were moist their nefesh to get the avoida back in the Beis HaMikdash. So says Rav Asher Arieli, the pattern has to work both ways. If when Klal Yisrael is nisrashel ba'avoida, the Rebbe Shem closes down the Beis HaMikdash, then when Klal Yisrael is moist their nefesh to get the avoida, it must be the Rebbe Shem will give an avoida min hashamayim that's l'mala min hateva. And that's the ness of the Parsha. In other ways, the Beis HaMikdash will never stay the same. Either like in the times of Shimon HaTzadik, the Ner Maravi will never go out, and the Lechem HaPanim will always be Masbiah, and the Eish Min HaShamayim will never need added wood. Or then Bechlal, the Beis HaMikdash will be closed up. There's no middle road. Either you're Nisrashel and you lose it, or you're Nischazik and you get Siyata D'Shmaya L'Mala Min HaTeva. That is the confluence of the two Nisim of Chanukah. It's not stam that there's a miracle of a military victory and a ness of the Parsha. Because Klal Yisrael was Nischazik Ba'avoida, the Rebbe Shem gave them Siyata D'Shmaya L'Mala Min HaTeva and the miracle of the Parsha. And this is something that I see in this Moisad, Shivas Veretzky, knowing from my Zayda, my Baba, what it looked like in this neighborhood 50 years ago. This is Mamish a Semel of Siyata D'Shmaya L'Mala Min HaTeva, and it's a limud for every bacher and for all of us. That on the Yom Tov of Chanukah, when we light those neiros, remind ourselves that we put in the little bit extra. The Rebbe Shem doesn't ask much, just a little bit more chizuk. Then we'll all be zoicha to tremendous Siyata D'Shmaya in our limudim, our midos, and our yer shamayim. And I want to thank everybody for inviting me. Wish everybody a freilich and Chanukah, Yasher Koyach, and Chazak ve'amatz, Baruch v'atzlach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.